Attach, you lose. Detach, you gain. It's one of the greatest knowledge bombs within the philosophy of Vedanta. We are back, baby, with another reflection on the Daily Vedantic. And I get to combine two of my favorite things in today's episode. The timeless philosophy of Advaita Vedanta and Seinfeld, one of the greatest TV shows of all time. There is an episode in Seinfeld that I think about so much, especially in the last decade of studying Vedanta, and that is the episode called The Opposite. Many Seinfeld fans will probably not remember the title of the episode, but will remember the premise, and that is when George, the hapless buffoon in Seinfeld, the best friend that can't ever really get his shit together, he starts to do the opposite of whatever his first instincts are. He tells the rest of the cast, he tells Jerry that, the main character, Jerry Seinfeld, he says, my life is a complete mess and everything that I've ever pursued has gone wrong. So I'm going to try doing the exact opposite of whatever my natural instinct is, because my instincts so far have completely led me astray. I'm going to do the exact opposite of my first instinct and see what happens. And it is a hilarious unfolding of an episode where everything works out for him. One of the best examples of this is when he introduces himself to a girl, and instead of his usual lies to impress or putting best foot forward, he says, "Hi, I'm George. I'm unemployed and I live with my parents." And the girl is blown away by his honesty, and it works. And that's one of a litany of examples where litany, what a funny word. We never use litany unless it's in the context of examples. It's kind of like profusely. No one ever says profusely unless they're talking about sweating or swearing. But in the litany of examples, that's maybe one of the funnier ones, but the entire episode is filled with all of these things that go right for him because he does the opposite of what he initially wanted to do. I think about this episode so often because it is the use of the intellect over the mind. Perhaps the central contribution of the philosophy of Vedanta in our practical lives is this. You have two internal equipments. Two. Not just a mind, which we all understand, talk about. But you have this other subtler equipment, the intellect, that is there to guide the mind. The mind might have the initial knee-jerk reaction to a scenario. Let's say at work or with friends or wanting to date someone. That is the initial desire. The intellect is that which can step in and say, that's my initial desire. That's my desire right now, or fear in this very moment. Fear, the anatomy of fear, just desiring to not lose something that you have. And that's my desires, to not lose this thing that I have, or desire for this thing that I don't have. And instead of leaning into that desire without, as the intellect is called, the adult in the room, without something overseeing, okay, is this action, is this subsequent action based on that desire actually going to help me get that thing? The intellect is often defined as the capacity to see the end in the beginning. So the raw, unabated desire might be, I want to date that girl. But the intellect in the room says, okay, well, there are different tactics I've taken in the past and didn't work very well. Let me try something else. The capacity to see the end in the beginning is, well, if I keep doing the same thing I've always done, then, well, maybe I'm going to get the same results that I've always gotten. George is obviously this cartoonish character in a TV show. So he is a caricature of anyone in real life. And at the extreme, He's such a fool, such a hapless individual that doing the exact opposite might be what's needed for him. But man, I actually find that so helpful for me in my everyday living as well. Maybe not necessarily doing the exact opposite, but certainly watching this first instinct to want to write this email back, or to say this, or to put this foot forward to try to impress. And I see that, and as you cultivate the observer, Sakshi is what it's called in Vedanta. As you cultivate and develop the intellect that watches this initial reaction, you get some elbow room from that initial reaction instead of being a slave to that initial reaction. You can contemplate, well, what would be the most effective reaction, response to what's happening? What would be the most effective to actually get what I'm seeking in the end, to see the end in the beginning? And how do I avoid the really idiotic response? The mindful but intellect-less response that would actually push away that which I am seeking and have the exact opposite effect of what I'm going for. This is where the episode title really hits home. The opposite. Attach, you lose. Detach, you gain. It's one of the greatest knowledge bombs within the philosophy of Vedanta. Attach, you lose. Detach, you gain. Paradoxically, the things that we desire strongly, that we're attached to, that attachment is the thing that pushes it away and gets us the exact opposite result we wanted. Attach, you lose. Detach, you gain. Built into that atomic knowledge bomb, and the second half of that is how to attain the thing that you're seeking, and that is to detach from it. Obviously paradoxical to detach from something that you're pursuing. But what's so helpful, not so tautological as it is just self-reinforcing, is to know that, well, if you really want that thing, be careful to not be attached to it. Too attached to a significant other, you push them away. Too attached to a result at work, you create the conditions that push that result infinitely further away. You detach from the results. You end up doing your task, the task in front of you, infinitely better, creating the likelihood of achieving those results much higher. Detach from needing a relationship to work out, and you create the coolness, the calmness, the composed approach that makes that relationship inevitable. It is the opposite of how we typically approach our daily lives. We think it's through attachment we get what we want. And maybe you get a few seconds of that thing that you want. But that attachment that brought you to it pushes it away, and at the end of the day, what you want isn't a few seconds with it. It's a sustainable relationship with that other person. It is not the promotion that then gets you fired 4 months later. It's not the adoration that lasts a few weeks and then turns sour because of the means in which you approached your job or your talent to get that adoration in the first place. You want it to be a sustainable relationship with that adoration. I would imagine you would want it to be a sustainable approach to that promotion, and not just a fleeting moment where you think you got what you wanted and then you realize, oh God, it completely evaded me. You get there from a detachment of that result. And you start approaching things radically honestly. Like George saying, I'm George, I'm unemployed, and I live with my parents. And that radical honesty is so, so rare. and that radical honesty with yourself, with the world, that calm, cool detachment from needing things to go a certain way, that calm, cool detachment from that need, things just start to go the way you always wanted them. Paradoxically, and the opposite of how we conventionally approach results or the things we pursue. That is today's reflection on the Daily Vedantic. We'll see you next time.